All right, today we are going to learn how to graph the sine and cosine curve. That's what we're learning today. So what I want to show you right here, this is something, it looks like a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What it is, if you look closely at it, it's the unit circle. What you have here, this is 0, 1, that's a half, that's 1. It's kind of got chopped off right there. But what each of these are, this is the angle measure. So from here, if you look at here to here, it's 30 degrees, pi over 6. If you were to make a right triangle, and we proved this last week, this ordered pair would be root 3 over 2, and this would be a half. This is your 45 degree. This would be root 2 over 2, comma root 2 over 2. That's what that point is right there. This is 60 degrees. This would be 1/2, and root 3 over 2 is your y value. And then pi over 2, this ordered pair is 0, 1. Now, what I have here, because this is just a lot, we're going to concentrate on these 4 lovely places. 0 radians is 1, 0. Pi over 2 is 1, 0. Pi is negative 1, 0. 0, negative 1 is 3 pi over 2, and then back to 2 pi. And if you're on the unit circle, what is the radius from here to here? What's the radius? 1. So we learned not only at these special spots what the ratios are, but we also know, we've been working on, if you have a 30-degree angle, 30 is equal to pi over 6, we've been talking about that. 45 is pi over 4, and 60 is pi over 3. Now, what was a quick way we remembered it? The 45 is the one with the 4 in it, and the 30 and the 60, it's opposite. So a 30 degree is pi over 6, whereas a 60 is pi over 3. So you want to start to memorize the fact that when you see pi over 6, you want to think of a 30-degree angle. When you're thinking of a 30-degree angle, you have to know these ratios. 1, 2, root 3. When you have a 45, you also know that as 1, 1, root 2. And you also know sine, not only is it opposite over hypotenuse, but it's y over r, cosine is x over r, and tangent's y over x. These are all things that we already know and have accepted at this point. So now I'm going to show you how to graph the sine curve. Well, what is the sine curve? Sine is equal to the side opposite over the hypotenuse, or the y value over the r value. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to make a comparison of what 2 things. The x-axis is going to be the angle measures, and the y-axis is going to be your ratios. So when we're talking angle measures, what angles are we talking about? We're talking about 0. We're talking about 30 degrees, pi over 6. We're talking about pi over 4. We're talking about 60 degrees, pi over 3, pi over 2, and so forth. Okay? So now, if we are graphing the sine curve, and the x-axis is our angles. So we have 0, pi over 2. This is going all the way around the unit circle, 0 to 360 degrees or 2 pi radians. So here to here these are all the first quadrant points. Now in between 0 and pi over 2, what's halfway between pi over 2? What's halfway between pi over 2? What angle is halfway between here and here? Pi over 4. What angle is just before pi over 4? Pi over 6. And which one's right after? Pi over 3. So if we fill in between 0 and pi over 2, if we have pi over 6, that's our 30 degree, 45, and 60, what would be the ratio? So at 0 radians, right here, we're here, the definition of sine is y over r. Well, the y value at 0 at 1, 0 is what? What's the y
I
value?
actually have a question.
Yes.
For all the x values over here, do you have to put just pi over the number?
Yes.
You can't write it as the degree, you should.
No, we're talking radians.
Okay.
We want to talk radians. So at, right here, yep, your y value is 0. So let's fill in these ratios. At 0, it's 0. Now, what did they do? They plotted here 0, 0. Now let's jump to pi over 2. Pi over 2 is right here. Here's pi over 2, that's 90 degrees. At 90 degrees, can you tell me what the y to r ratio is?
1.
1 over 1, which is right here. So over pi over 2 up 1. If we go to this point right here, pi, what's the ratio at pi? It's 0, because the y value is 0. 0 over 1 is 0. At pi over 2, what's the y value? So we're taking a little walk on these 4 points. At pi over 2, the y value is -1. -1 over 1 is -1. And back to 2 pi, the y value is 0. So what we have graphed here is this point, so 0. We have pi over 2, 1. We have pi 0. 3 pi over 2, -1. And 2 pi 0. So right now, all I did was graph these 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, do you know where these came from? Because the ratio is y over r. And at 0 radians, or 0 degrees, the y value is 0. At pi over 2, the y value is 1. At pi, it's 0. At 3 pi over 2, the y value is -1. And at 2 pi, again, it's at 0. Now, where do all these other numbers come from? Well, in between 0 and pi over 2 are these angle measures. We have a 30 degree, we have a 45, and we have a 60 degrees. Well, if we're comparing side opposite over hypotenuse, let's jump to our 30-degree angle. Here's our 30-degree angle. What is the side opposite
1
over
over
the
2.
hypotenuse?
1 over 2.
1 over 2, which is about 0.5. So, here's pi over 2, here's pi over 4, here's pi over 6, and here's pi over 3. Let's see if we're right on. So over 30 degrees, it should be pi over 1/2, which is right there. There's 1/2. How about pi over 4? Pi over 4 is right here. Look at the comparison of if you had a 45, 45, 90 triangle, which is right here. What is the opposite over hypotenuse? It's 1 over root 2. Now, if you were to convert this 1 over root 2 into a decimal, 1 over root 2 is approximately 0.707. And then if you do the 60 degree, root 3 over 2 is about 0.86 or 0.87. So I want you to write this. This is 0.7. And then root 3 over 2 is approximately 0.87. So let's make sure we're right on here. So pi over 4 is about 0.7. And pi over 3 is about 0.87. So what's happening is there's a bunch of angles in between these, infinite as a matter of fact, that what's happening is these ratios are going up, 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 and the highest it's going to reach is a 1. And then as you're going around the circle, now when I mean pi over 2 to pi, what angles am I talking about? I'm talking about 2 pi over 3, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 6, and then pi. And then again, 7 pi over 6, 5 pi over 4, 4 pi over 3, and 3 pi over 2. You're going to keep going all the way around. What's happening, you will get, believe it or not, you will get these points. All of these points. From here to here, it goes up to 1, then to 0, then to -1, and all the way around the circle. So this is what the sine graph looks like. Now, I want you to remember it as on. The sine graph is on, above, on, below, on. So it starts here, It goes up, and it goes back to 0, back down to -1, back to 0. So, what happens is, if we extended our table, because our table actually keeps going on, we talked about coterminal angles. We just graphed this period right here. We call it a period from here to here. We went, this cycle is from 0 to 2 pi. That cycle will continue on, it'll keep going, and it's gonna keep going. Because, see this point right here? It's the same as 2 pi. And then it's, again, the same as 4 pi. And then 6 pi. And then 8 pi. Every 2 pi, the cycle's gonna start over again. So the graph from example 1 is 1 full period of the sine curve, and it goes from, the interval is from 0 to 2 pi. And then it repeats itself, the pattern repeats itself. So what is the period is 1 complete cycle around the unit circle. So 1 complete cycle is your period. So we have, your period is, it goes from 0 to 2 pi. Now, how high off the x-axis are you going? That is called the amplitude. Now, in the problem we just did, we were 1 unit off the x-axis. That's called your amplitude. So you're 1 unit off the x-axis. Here's your x-axis. From here to here, that's your maximum value, and your minimum is -1. Where that amplitude comes from is the number in front of the word sine. So this one has a 2 on it. So if you were to look at the original points, and I'm only going to do the main points, like 0, pi over 2, 90 degrees, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. We're not gonna mess around with the 45s and the 30s. We're just gonna do which angles. I want to just do these ones. This one, 1, 0, 90, 180, and this one. And then back to 2 pi. So how do I get these y values? Well, sine, we said, is the y value over the r value. So at 0 degrees or 0 radians, we're going to talk radians, the y value is 0 and r is 1. So what's 0 over 1? 0. Then at pi over 2, what's the y value?
1.
1 over 1 is 1. At pi, what's the y value?
0.
0. 3 pi over 2, what's the y value? -1 over 1 is -1. And back to 2 pi, you get 0. So if this were a 1 right here, these would be your points. It'd be 0, 0, pi over 2, 1, pi 0. So I'm doing it in my blue pen. 3 pi over 2, -1, and 2 pi 0. So this in blue is the graph y equals sine x, or you could say f of t equals sine of t. You can use t or you can use y and x. Now, what did we learn chapters ago, what the number in front does to a graph? What does it do?
Horizontal stretches.
It's a vertical stretch by a factor of 2. Mathematically, what do you do with these y values?
Multiply by 2.
You take the y values and multiply them by 2. So if you had to right now take the this is called the parent function. We're going to multiply 0 times 2. What do you get?
0.
You get 0. What's 1 times 2? What's 0 times 2? What's -1 times 2? And what's 0 times 2? So watch, this is the actual answer. 0, 0, which is right here. Pi over 2, 2. Pi 0. 3 pi over 2, -2. And that. Now, what do we call this 2 from here to here?
Amplitude.
That's called the amplitude. That comes from this right here. So how high off the x-axis are you? You are 2 units, above and below. So the maximum value, let's write the max. What's the highest y value is 2. The lowest y value is -2. Your amplitude is 2. Your domain, because this thing is going on and on and on, your domain is all real numbers. And your range is, it's your max and your min. This makes up your range. Your range is your lowest y value to your highest y value. So it's these two gives you your range. Now, what did we talk about when we have a negative in front? What does this negative do?
Flips it over the x-axis.
It reflects
Oh, flat.
over the x-axis. Now, let's look at those main points again. 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And it was on, above, on, below, on. Now, what would we do with the y values? We'd multiply them by -1. So if you multiplied all of these by -1, what would you get? 0, -1, 0, 1, 0. So now let's plot them. 0, 0 is right there. Pi over 2, now it's -1. Pi 0, 3 pi over 2, +1 now, and 2 pi 0. So what happened to our graph?
It reflected.
It was reflected over the x-axis. It originally looked like this. It looked like that. So what happened when there was a negative? Instead of starting on and going above, it went below, it went backwards. Okay? All right, what do you think this +1 is gonna do? What did we talk? This is gonna shift your graph up 1 unit. So now, our x-axis is not right here. This is not our x-axis. What you're gonna do is look for this number right here, which is 1. I want you to make a broken line. This is your new x-axis. New x-axis. Now, can you tell me what the amplitude is? Amplitude is 3. That is going to tell you how high off the x-axis you're going to be. So without making a t-chart and remembering what the sine curve did, we're going to start on, and we're going to go to pi over 2, and we're going to go 3 units above. It's going to go on, above,
So it's from your new dotted line.
yep, on, and then go 3 down below, and then 3 back up. So this is what this graph looks like. Everyone see that? So let's dissect this for a second. See this +1? That's your new x-axis. This is a shift 1 unit up. Your amplitude, this from the distance from your x-axis to your highest point, what's this 4 called? Your 4 is your maximum. And this is gonna be your minimum. So your max, your period is always gonna be 0 to 2 pi. Your maximum on this one is 4. That's the highest y value that our graph reaches. The lowest y value is -2. Your amplitude is how high off the x-axis. How high is this hill gonna go? It's 3 units. That's your amplitude, 3. From here to here is 3, this is 3 units high. Here to here is 3 units, 3 units. And from here to here is 3 units. Does everyone understand that? You're gonna go 3 up and 3 down. From here to here is 3 units. Now, your domain is all real numbers. And your range, what did I say your range comes from? Your max and your min. Organize it. What's the smaller of the two numbers? Then to 4. So understand that your range are all of these numbers in between here. So it ranges from -2 to 4
Can you go back to how you wrote it? And put it in brackets.
in brackets.
Okay.
Yep,
Going to brackets again now?
yep, now we're doing brackets.
The class is so different.
So, you have to understand that because the cycle, that is one complete cycle. And then what happens is it repeats itself. This thing is gonna keep going and going. And that's why your domain is all real numbers. And it's gonna go back, it can go backwards too. So this is gonna be the graph of it. So can you tell me basically how to do these problems? How do you do them? What do you do? You start where? What's the first thing you're gonna look at? Look for your,
Amplitude. Amplitude.
look for what?
Trends, graph trends.
Look for your vertical shift, up or down, start there. So if there is a number after the word sine, that's gonna shift your graph up or down, so start there. Then, if the A value, that's called your amplitude, if it's a positive number, you start there and you're gonna go up that number of units and then back on. So it goes on, above, on, below, on. Now, if this is a negative number, you're gonna go backwards. You're gonna start on and go down. Yes,
I'm like confused on how you get the period.
the period is, at this point right here, this pattern is gonna continue. So from 0 to 2 pi, we went through one complete cycle. Now, what's happened here? We've listed all of the angles from here, from 0 to pi over 2 to 2 to pi to 3 pi over 2 and then 2 pi. What's gonna happen is those same ratios are gonna repeat again. That's why it started at 0, and then at 2 pi, you're gonna have the same ratios, because these are all coterminal. See, this angle is coterminal. If you went around, you're gonna get another angle. If you were to add 12 pi, this is equal to 13 pi over 6. So it's gonna happen again and again. Like this is 0, this is 0, this is 2 pi, this is 4 pi, this is 6 pi, this is 8 pi. Every 2 pi, you're gonna get that same ratio. So from here to here, that's the cycle, 0 to 2 pi. Now, I'm gonna go quick over cosine. The cosine graph, here's the cosine graph. Let's look at just the main points, like 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So we're going once around the circle, right? This is once around, all the way around the circle. When we're talking about going once around, this is what we're talking about. Here's 0, here's pi, pi over 2, what's wrong with me? Pi, and 3 pi over 2. So now, when we're calling these the angles, what I want to know, the y value are the ratios. Well, this is 1, 0, this is 0, 1, this is -1, 0, and this is 0, -1. Okay, so if cosine is the x value over the r value, tell me at 0 radians, what is the x value here?
1.
And by the way, r is 1, okay? So we're basically looking at all of the x values. So what is the x value at 0 radians? What is it?
1.
1. So that's why you have this point right here at 0, 1. Next point, pi over 2. Where's pi over 2? Right here. What's the x value? It's 0. So at pi over 2, it's at 0 right there.
So it's just flipped from the sign.
How about pi? Here's pi. Negative 1. So at pi negative 1, pi negative 1 right there. So I'm on my third point. Then 3 pi over 2, what's the x value? 0. Right there. And then 2 pi. What is this one? 1. Okay, so what do I have here? Watch me, see if you can.
But I'm a lot of math.
That is one complete period. So again, let's fill out this chart. The period is, it goes from 0 to 2 pi. And then what's gonna happen is it's gonna, see this point right here? It repeats it right there. Then this point is gonna be this point over here. It's this cycle keeps continuing. This point is gonna be down here. The maximum value is 1, the minimum is -1. Your amplitude is 1, your domain is all real numbers, and your range goes from -1 to 1. Now, check this out. Watch me draw this. What does this look like?
Martini glass.
Am I lying?
Like what?
It does.
That's how I remember. It looks like a glass. Looks like one of my fine china cups, right? Okay, so now,
Can I see that picture again?
yep,
The cosine.
so how are you gonna remember, the difference between the cosine graph and the sine graph? How would you describe the difference?
Sine, you're starting from a corner, so it's cosine, you're
We're starting above. Okay, good.
I like what I'm doing here.
You like this? Okay, good. Good. All right, now see this negative?
It's flipping.
See this negative? Normally, it started, this is what the cosine graph looked like. It looked like this. Right? This is what it was when I drew my picture. This one right here. Well, what's different if you see a negative? It's going to start down, it's going to be upside down.
Yeah.
So how would you describe that one?
Upside down.
It's a,
Looks like a bell.
yeah.
There you go.
There,
Oh,
make it a bell.
A bell one.
Okay, so see if you could do this one. Example 7. Where did I say to start off?
At the vertical shift.
Check that, vertical shift. It's 2 down. Everyone got that? 2 down. So
Yeah.
why do I have a dotted line here?
Because it becomes a new x sector.
Because that's where you're gonna start. So now the cosine graph looked like a cup, right? And what's this number called? That's your amplitude, how high off the x-axis you're gonna be. So where should I start this graph? You should start it here. And all you have to do is go on, above, on, you're gonna go 2 below, back on, in here. So this is what one period of this graph looks like. Like that. How's that? So it's 2 units off the x-axis this way and this way. Do you see it? Now you could keep going. You could keep going. But this is just one full period from 0 to 2 pi. So let's fill in this. Our period is 0 to 2 pi. You're not going to have to do this for all of them. Just
Is it always going to be 0 to 2 pi?
one full period for sine and cosine right now is 0 to 2 pi. It will change.
keep it the
It
same.
will change, but for now it's 0 to 2 pi. Can you tell me what the maximum value is here?
0.
It's 0. What's the minimum? What's the amplitude? What's the domain? All real numbers. And the range is going to go from,
-4 to 0.
good job, -4 to 0. The grand finale. last one. How would you graph this one? I don't care if you do a T-chart, I just put it there in case
I'm
you need
going
it,
to
but
curl.
where, without me telling you.
Put in a new one.
Next to new x.
New x-axis, I like that. I like that, how you say that, new x-axis,
Okay.
good. Then what?
It's a negative, so you're gonna invert it. so-
Yep, so start, now, whoops, I didn't mean to do that, dot. Take that back. Normally, if this were a positive 3, where would you start? You would start 3 high. Remember, we want to make it a cup? So you would start 3 high, 1, 2, 3.
So now it's
But this one, you're going to start upside down.
-2.
1, 2, 3. You're going to start here. Good. So here on, or below, then you're going to go back on, and then go 3 above. 1, 2, 3. And then on, and then below. So this is what this looks like. Make it curvy. I know these are kind of hard to draw sometimes. But does it look like a bell?
Yeah.
So what's the period? 0 to pi. What's the max?
3.
Min? Amplitude?
2.
Amplitude is always a positive number. Don't say amplitude is
3.
-3. Domain is all real numbers, and your range is -2, comma 4. Easy?
Yeah.
Okay. Brett, stop. Those are your notes.
No.